This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. His hand the wonders wrought.
Thanks for joining today. I want to emphasize before we get started here that I have never played Two Truths and a Lie, the drinking game, and I'm certainly not encouraging you to play. That's not the point of this at all. But there is a sense probably in which in vino veritas, as the old Latin saying goes, that alcohol tends to bring the truth out in people, at least oftentimes it does. Ostensibly, the game is designed to help people understand one another better. And so a person will say three things about themselves, and two of them will be true, and one of them will be a lie. And you find out what kind of a person that actually is and how well you know that person. Well, we're going to play that game after a fashion, at least, by looking at three Bible characters and looking at three things that they say. And two of them are going to be true, and one of them is going to be a lie. And by looking at these characters and looking at the way they conduct themselves, we'll find out what they're all about, whether they are, in fact, generally speaking, standing for the truth, how bad a half-lie actually is, and maybe some generalizations toward the end about what our role is in God's plan, and are we, as occasional sinners, in the same camp, essentially, as someone who has no regard for God's things at all. We're going to start in Genesis chapter 20 with a character named Abraham. I'm sure you're very well aware of who Abraham is. Abraham is a man of faith, and he has just been told very recently that he is going to have a son. Eventually, his wife Sarah is not pregnant yet, but he is going to have a son at some point in the not too distant future, and that is going to further testify to the fact that God has a plan for Abraham and a plan for Sarah in the very near future. That He's going to make him into a great nation. And Abraham, at this particular juncture in his life, chooses to duplicate a mistake that he made earlier with regard to the truth. He travels into the land of Abimelech here, and Abimelech has designs for Abraham's wife, Sarah, because he has been led to believe that Sarah is unmarried, that Sarah is available. But God appears to Abimelech in a vision and tells him what the truth of the matter is, and he confronts Abraham, starting in verse number 8. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their hearing, and the men were greatly frightened. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done me things that ought not to be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What have you encountered that you have done this thing?" Abraham said, "Because I thought, surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came about when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, this is the kindness which you will show to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother." There is truth in the matter of there not being any fear in the land that Abraham was entering into. At least there's no indication that there was. Abimelech has some regard for the God of heaven, and he certainly responds very strongly to this dream that he has from God. But Abraham had some reason to expect that traveling into a foreign land, surrounded by people who had their own gods, that they would not have any regard for the God that he served, the one true God of heaven. And by implication beyond that, if they did not regard God, they would not regard God's values. They very well may indulge in a little bit of murder if it meant getting the woman of their liking. And Sarah, evidently, even in later years, was a very attractive woman. Now, I think the irony here is that the fear of God was actually missing from Abraham rather than from Abimelech. That Abraham maybe should have been focusing more on his own fear rather than the fear that he perceived to be in other places. Abraham misses a tremendous opportunity here. Going into a land of of paganism, going into a land of doubt, a land of atheism, or whatever form of rebellion you might want to talk about. And this has very much relevance in the modern day. When we go into the world that surrounds us that oftentimes has no regard for the things of God, that is not an excuse for us to not regard God either. That is an opportunity for us to stand for the truth, an opportunity to be different from the world, to stand apart and be counted for faith. Abraham could have done that and been a good example. He chose not to do that. He chose to cower instead. It's also true that Sarah was his sister. After a fashion, at least. Abraham says so. We have no reason to doubt him this time. He's bent the truth before, but I have never met anybody who thought that he's bending the truth here, although the text doesn't say anywhere else that she's his sister. So let's assume for our argument's sake that she is his half-sister in this situation. We are not to take away from this the idea that Abraham passed her off as his sister so Abimelech would have a better understanding of what their true relationship was. That's ridiculous. That's exactly the opposite of why Abraham did that. He didn't want Abimelech to know what their relationship was. He was trying to hide it from him. So that little bit of truth is really irrelevant in the big picture. Was Abraham trying to deceive, or was he trying to share truth? Clearly he was trying to deceive. The lie behind this, of course, is that she's not his wife. And whether it was said in so many words or whether it was necessarily implied when he passed her off as his sister, that was the lie that Abraham told. She's not my wife. She is his wife. And the tragedy behind this, of course, is that Abraham and Sarah, who are passed off in the New Testament as examples of godly husbands and wives, 1 Peter chapter 3 tells us that. And there's no reason to believe that they were anything other than that as a rule. Here on this occasion, Abraham, as Sarah's husband, Sarah's protector, imperils her virtue because he's afraid he's going to get killed. Now, that's kind of the opposite of one flesh, isn't it? Abraham puts Sarah in harm's way, very much in harm's way, because he doesn't have enough faith to believe that God is going to take care of him. That is not what husbands are supposed to be doing for their wives. We are called to something better than that. What we need to take away from this story is that God's ways are always best. We can have confidence that going in his way is going to be right. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, not some of your heart, most of your heart, a lot of your heart, all your heart. And do not lean on your own understanding. Don't try to figure your way out through the world. Make it simpler than that. Just trust in God. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. That is the confidence that we can and that we should have as the people of God. And hopefully we can minimize these little blips in the record here. Abraham is a great man of faith. He has a very, very bad day. What we need to do is embolden ourselves and strengthen ourselves so that we are able to endure these difficult times, make good decisions in times of stress rather than bad decisions. Now we're going to turn at this point to the book of Exodus chapter 32, and look at a second character, a man named Aaron. And Aaron also is a man who plays a very prominent role, very important role in the plan of God. He is the brother of Moses. He is ultimately going to be the first high priest of the nation of Israel. But he is in charge of the mob when Moses goes up into the mountain, and he quickly finds himself out of his depth. The people are boisterous. They want to rebel against Moses, who they haven't seen in weeks. They want to go their own way, and they ask him to make an idol, and that's exactly what he does. And when Moses comes down from the mountain, he finds this situation, and he confronts Aaron, starting in verse number 21. Then Moses said to Aaron, What did this people do to you, that you have brought such great sin upon them? Aaron said, Do not let the anger of my Lord burn. You know the people yourself, that they are prone to evil. For they said to me, Make a god for us, who will go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. I said to them, Whoever has gold, let them tear it off. So they gave it to me, and I threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. That is perhaps the most entertaining lie that we find anywhere in Scripture, if you want to look at it that way, or the most ridiculous lie. That might be a little bit better way of describing it here. But let's look at the truth behind this. There is some truth that Aaron tells here. The people were evil. They had been living their lives for 400 years, multiple generations in Egypt, and clearly most of them had no concept of the God of heaven. Some did. And certainly they had been exposed to the God of heaven considerably in Egypt, in the wilderness already. They had seen the spectacular show here at Mount Sinai, heard the voice from heaven. But still, they had a lot of evil to overcome. They had a lot of bad habits to undo. And Aaron is in position, if he chooses to take advantage of this, he is in a position to help them through this difficult time. No, we're not going to make an idol. We're going to trust in God. We're going to trust in Moses. And he himself is going to trust in God. Well, what are the people going to do? Does it really matter? Isn't the only thing that matters that he himself trusts in God, that he stands for what's right, that he does what he knows is the right thing to do, even if all of the people wind up being evil? That's what Aaron's job is, and Aaron rebels against that job. Notice Moses comes and speaks to Aaron. What have you done? You were responsible. You should have helped avoid this situation. Instead, you took charge of this situation. Likewise, it is true that the people did come to Aaron for help, that this was their idea ultimately. They were the ones who doubted Moses. They were the ones who wanted to indulge in some kind of idol, some kind of visible, tangible representation of deity. But let's not get carried away with ourselves. The golden calf was Aaron's idea. Aaron is the one who chose this particular path here. He can't push this off onto the people entirely. He could have stopped this at any time. Instead, he found a way to do what the people wanted him to do, rather than finding a way that God wanted him to do. And of course, the lie is relatively obvious, right? The calf did not come out on its own, not in the conventional sense. The way that Aaron phrases it, it's like the calf just kind of sprung from the fire by itself, which is not only a lie, but also a particularly dangerous lie, because this is not something that statues do. And if the golden calf did, in fact, jump out of the fire on its own, that would be a powerful testimony to this fake God that Aaron was presenting to the people. We are not told whether he told that story to the people or not, but if he did, what a horrible compounding of lying that would be. The lie that he is giving credibility to the idol, and by extension to idol worship itself, and by further extension, undermining the effort that the one true God of heaven, that Moses, and to this point that Aaron, had been trying to do for the people. It's a colossal failure of faith and of behavior. What we need to do is emphasize our connection to holiness at all times, including and particularly when we're facing adversity. I'll refer you to Psalm 51, and many of the Psalms are written along these lines. David, of course, is writing Psalm 51 in the context of his Bathsheba incident. He asks at this time in this marvelous prayer, starting in verse 10, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and sustain me with a willing spirit. Then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners will be converted to you." If we can allow ourselves to be put in the hand of God and allow him to make us, to cleanse us, to make a clean heart within us, then we are going to be put in position like Aaron was, to be a voice of reason, a voice of holiness, a voice of righteousness, to guide other people in the right path. If we're so caught up in the wrong path ourselves, of course we cannot hope to be forces for righteousness in the world. We have to expect more out of us than that, more out of ourselves than that. We have to be vessels for holiness. Now I'll turn your attention to a third character that we find in 2 Kings chapter 18, and this character is quite different from the other two. This is not an Israelite. This is not a partaker in the hope of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is a man whose technical name probably we do not know. The New American Standard Bible calls him Rabshakeh, but this is probably a title rather than an actual name. Some of the translations render it the Rabshakeh. The word seems to be derived from an Assyrian word for chief of staff or general, somebody like that. This is the spokesman for the ruler of the world, for Sennacherib, the emperor of Assyria. The Assyrians have already taken the northern kingdom of Israel off into captivity. They have conquered most of Judah to the south, and they are on the doorstep of destroying Jerusalem and bringing an end, essentially, to the hope of Israel. Hezekiah is the king of Judah, and he is holed up in the city with the whoever's left over, trying to survive in siege conditions. It's ugly, it's horrific, it's painful. People are dying, lands are being destroyed. It's worst case scenario, basically. And Rabshakeh speaks to the people starting in verse number 28 of 2 Kings chapter 18. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in Judean, saying, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, Do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you from my hand, nor let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, The Lord will surely deliver us, and the city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah. For thus says the king of Assyria, Make your peace with me, and come out to me, and eat each of his vine and each of his fig tree, and drink each of the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey, that you may live and not die. But do not listen to Hezekiah when he misleads you, saying, The Lord will deliver us. Has any one of the gods of the nations delivered his land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Eva? Have they delivered Samaria from my hand? Who among all the gods of the lands have delivered their land from my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem from my hand? And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing some of these names correctly. But here's this point, and it's a good point. It's an accurate point. It's truth. That and this was the standard policy for the Assyrians, they would come and conquer a land and they would take the natives off to some other place and repopulate it with other people. It's their way of breaking down the national character, essentially. Rabshakeh says, this siege is not my idea. This is Hezekiah's idea. If I had my way, if Sennacherib had his way, you'd go home today. You could eat your own food. You could drink your own water. This siege would be over immediately. And you could stay free until I took you to some other place where I'd take you and you'd be comfortable there too. I don't want you to die. Hezekiah is the one who's the problem here. All you have to do is quit. And oftentimes, let's be honest, quitting is the obvious and easy way to avoid short-term consequences. When we make a choice, and particularly in the context of Hezekiah, a choice for God, a choice for the things of God, sometimes that hurts in the short term. And if we would just abandon God's task, if we would just quit, everything go back to normal again. All these bad things would quit happening to us. We'd be more comfortable. We'd be more at ease. In the short term, and I emphasize short term here, in the short term, it seems like the best idea, because it satisfies our short-term needs. We're hungry right now. We're thirsty right now. We're scared right now. If we would just do what the bad guys are saying and not pay attention to what the good guys are saying, we could come out of this okay. There's some truth to that. There's also some truth to the idea that these other gods had not delivered their nation, including Samaria, which is a reference to the northern tribes. They had not delivered their nation. And Sennacherib, of course, is making the assumption that the God of heaven is not going to be any better. The God of Hezekiah is not going to be any better. Well, it's true that these other nations had their gods and they engaged in their worship and they had their faith and they were just as devout probably as Hezekiah was or any of the Jews were in Jerusalem. And they died and they lost their land and their nations were destroyed. Faith in those gods didn't do any good whatsoever. Now, the difference, obviously, from our perspective is that those gods were not gods at all. And that the God of Hezekiah is the God of the universe. That Yahweh, Jehovah God, he is in fact real and he is in fact in control of the universe, including in control of Sennacherib, by the way. Now, so the lie that, or the truth, the so-called truth that Rabshakeh is saying is based on a lie. Now, the real lie, of course, and that leads into the last point, the real lie is that the God of heaven is no different from these other gods. And he absolutely is. He's different in every way. The true God is fundamentally different from idols. And whatever may have been accomplished or not accomplished in the name of these foreign gods has nothing to do with reality, has nothing to do with Hezekiah, has nothing to do with Judah, and it has nothing to do with us. The truth of the matter is this one true God had delivered his people time and time again. Delivered them in the time of Egypt, delivered them in the time of the wilderness, delivered them in the time of the judges and Joshua, and on and on. If they had been faithful to God, they would have continued to survive. They would have continued to prosper. Their current circumstances is because they did not stay faithful to God. So we need to remember that in these times when people are trying to convince us that our religion is part of the problem rather than part of the solution, that abandoning our heritage, abandoning our faith is the quickest way, the best way to fix our world, that is simply a lie. That is not true. And trusting in the one true God of heaven, as silly as it may seem, as much ridiculed as it may be in some quarters, this is the way to preserve our lives. This is the way to preserve our future. This is a way to live our lives in dignity and hope and confidence, because God is in fact with us. I'll read from Psalm 37 rather, starting in verse 1. Do not fret because of evildoers. Be not envious toward wrongdoers, for they will wither quickly like the grass and fade like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your judgment as in the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who carries out wicked schemes. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only leads to evildoing. For evildoers will be cut off. But those who wait for the Lord, they will inherit the land. Yet a little while, and the wicked man will be no more. And you will look carefully for his place, and he will not be there. But the humble will inherit the land, and he will delight themselves in abundant prosperity. There's a reason why you haven't seen a whole lot of Assyrians these days. These were the enemies of God. They looked like they were going to rule the world, and God stopped them in their tracks. Killed 185,000 of them in a single night, because it was his will to do so. We can have confidence that God is going to take us through these difficult times, that God is going to give us peace and give us success in his way, in his manner. Before we close up, I want to emphasize that there is a world of difference between a good person who does something wrong and a bad person. There is a profound difference between Abraham and Aaron and Rabshakeh. Abraham and Aaron ultimately are good men, godly men. That's the way they're described in the text, repeatedly, over and over again. They had their mistakes, clearly, they had their failures, but they are ultimately people who live in truth, people who embrace truth. Jesus says, sanctify them in your truth. In truth, the truth, your word is truth. Such has always been the case. In John 17:17, it was true in the Old Testament as well. When God revealed truth, God's people came to the truth. Now, sometimes they didn't accept it. Sometimes they didn't practice it. But they were always of a mind to embrace the things of God. And such is the case with Abraham and Aaron. All of God's people are occasionally going to have moments of weakness. We're not rationalizing that. We're not excusing that. We're just saying it's true. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Such is the case before, during, and after our present time. If God gives us much more breath, I'm sure that we're going to fall short again. But we, as the people of God, can come to him for forgiveness. We can come for mercy and kindness and patience, because we have a relationship with him that's based on the truth of God's word. And because of that connection, because of our faith, God is able to forgive us and look past our shortcomings, look past our mistakes. He may ask us to pay the consequences for our mistakes. Aaron certainly did. I think you could argue that Abraham did as well. And certainly we oftentimes are forced to abide by circumstances of our own creation so that God can teach us the lesson that apparently we're a little bit too slow in learning. But ultimately, regardless of how much or how long we suffer, God loves us, and God is lifting us up and guiding us to a better way. And hopefully we'll have enough faith to grow from these mistakes and perhaps even make fewer of them in the future than we had in the past. The incident of Rabshakeh is totally different. This is a man who has no regard for God, no regard for the things of God, no regard for God's morality or God's decency or God himself. He is the liar, not the truth teller. Not because he said something that wasn't true, but because he has no regard for the truth of God, for the truth of God's word. This naturally results in profligate behavior. It results in immorality of all sorts. It's no accident that nations that have rejected the things of God reject God's morality. That just naturally follows. Romans chapter 1 catalogs that for us. The blasphemy of Rabshakeh is without regret. He has no regard for Hezekiah, has no regard for the God of Hezekiah. And when people walk down that path, there is no hope. There is no forgiveness. There is no mercy upon that person, because that person ultimately is not asking for mercy. He is living his own life, and a life that is in rebellion against the things of God. He is the liar that John has the revelation about in Revelation 21 verse 7. The liars that have their place in the pit of fire, not in the holy city. We have to make sure that we pursue God's things and only God's things, so that we can reject this negative example and embrace the positive example that are not perfect examples except for Jesus Christ himself, of course, but learn from the example of Aaron and Abraham and others as well, including learning from their mistakes, so that we can accept the discipline that God gives us, that he occasionally gives us at least, and repent of our sins so that we can be more like he would have us to be in the future. Hebrews chapter 12 talks about the binding up of broken bones and the discipline of fathers. We are not where we ought to be. Maybe that's because we made a specific mistake. Maybe that's because we haven't worked hard enough. But whatever it happens to be, God is taking us to the next level. And with his help, we're going to make it there.
This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied.